Well, we have our full panel here now, so we'll go ahead and get started. Leanne is so clever. She, of course, weaved crossroads into her talk and all that this morning. So the title of this is, of course, the role of parents and significant others in hiring. We've expanded that a little bit. There's a second title, sort of the subtitle. This is Collision at the Crossroads, and so, or how to avoid it. And so we have Steve Green from State Street, we have Stacy from Garmin, and we have Dana from K-State. And you have their bios in there, so I don't want to just try to regurgitate that. If you all have something additional you want to add and introduce yourselves, that would be great. We'll let them share some of their experiences from the employer standpoint as well as from a university standpoint of some programming that they're doing to involve parents and probably to help wean children off parents a little bit, or parents off of children. And then there'll be an opportunity at the end for some questions and answers. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to y'all to go ahead and add anything to your bios there, introduce yourselves, and then let's all begin.
Hi. As mentioned, my name is Steve Green. I've been with State Street Corporation, a leading financial services organization that's a worldwide player in our industry, for over 15 years. Prior to that, I was working in a retailing career for about 25 years before joining State Street. So the opportunity to look at this topic, both not only from my background in employment with retail, but also look at it for financial services, that got me thinking in a couple of different ways about this topic. So I think it's a really relevant topic for the times that we live in right now, and a lot of things changing in this space that even we can kind of lift back and look at what Craig Benson was just talking to us about. So looking forward to the discussion.
Great. And again, I'm Stacey Peterson with Garmin. I've been with Garmin a little over 7 years, and specifically in my role now, I'm our college relations team lead. So I handle all of the recruitment. My team and myself handle all of the recruitment for full-time and intern, all new graduates, so anybody 2 years or less with college education and that type of thing. So we deal with families on a pretty regular basis, especially with this generation. They're very, very much involved in the decision-making with their child or student in that matter. And so we've done some things, and we'll get into that a little bit more on how to address that and some other situations that have been interesting that we've come across where maybe families are involved, kind of what we've done with that. So it's definitely very relevant for Garmin and what we do, and we've kind of tried to embrace it in creative ways. So.
My name is Dana Nordyke, and I'm an assistant director at KACE Career Services. I'm going on my 5th year, I guess. And I guess I have kind of this career services perspective of how parents interact with our office, how they interact in general with our university. Like, we're very, very open to having family involvement, and there's a point where, of course, we have like privacy guidelines and things like that, but in general, we very much embrace the family involvement on campus and being on campus. And I've also, just to, I guess, add to my bio a little bit, I've been involved in the new student orientation. I did that for 2 years, and so each summer we do like 22 different parent sessions where we meet with the parents, and I'm sure a lot of you here do that as well, but I think we've had some interesting questions and some good conversation with parents regarding some of their kind of concerns with their students coming into a college program and what that means for future employment, and a lot of different types of questions we've tried to field and help them kind of answer. So, but I'm also looking forward to this being more of a discussion. So if you have things you'd like to talk about, definitely just shout out or ask us whatever you'd like to on that.
So I guess we'll start with y'all sharing some of your experiences. We'll start with maybe Steve.
Yeah, I think experientially a couple of different things. I think first and foremost, I'll speak from a parent standpoint. I've had a graduate that has gone on from high school into college. She's in her sophomore year at University of Missouri, and being on the parent side of the fence of going to summer welcome and all of those things and listening to the workshops, and whether that was the finance department talking to you about when you have to pay and when the check needs to be there to you can't bounce and whatnot, not only that, those responsibilities that become kind of a partnership responsibility with the student and the parent to make sure things go well and communication lines are open, but then looking at every other aspect of, you know, the student's life on campus and what to expect with that and how to expect. So I've been very pleased, I mean, surprisingly pleased that the way it was described to me as a parent and my wife about what my student was going to experience is very true to form. You know, and I can say that 2 years in that it's pretty consistent. When we look at it from an employment standpoint and look at the experience inside the workforce, like I said, from a retail standpoint, I was used to dealing with the youngest generation at any given time, back at that time. And it was not uncommon that parents would call you at different times during the employment engagement opportunity. For some parents, it might have been that it was their student's first job in the work world, okay? So think back to you, or if your sons or daughters at the age of 16 or 15 and starting to get that motivation of, well, you know, I need money to afford something, or saving up for a car, or this or that or the other thing. And then they take that first employment opportunity, you know, and they start to enter into that process, and they need to present themselves well and whatnot. We'd have parents on the front end of that might, you know, come just to make sure that they made the introduction with their student, because at that time in a retail environment, they might have been customers at our store that we see every single week. So, you know, whether that person was going to advance in the employment process or be rejected at the end of the process, I still had to keep the customer focused at the end of the day. I want that customer coming back. I want future customers, okay? So there was a different motivation in that process and making sure it was a professional process for me. When I look at the financial services business and I look at what we do at State Street, and largely if I look at entry level and say that that's college age students, it could be anywhere from folks that have completed a 2-year degree, or maybe they don't have a degree, they have experience in lieu of a degree, or graduate students coming in for the first time, maybe even older. Every one of those opportunities gives you a different experience on engagement. We've had some people that will, you know, go home and counsel with their parents before the job offer. That's probably the most common thing that I see, especially what parents might say, well, if you can get health insurance and you can get a 401k program, look at that job harder, okay? But what we see people doing is having a little bit of that overwhelming theory of, well, gosh, there's so many decisions, and they do. They seek out whoever that appropriate counsel is to help them make those decisions. So you might get some calls from somebody else saying, I just want to make sure I better understand this. My son or daughter told me this, but I want to understand it through your terms. So people just seeking understanding is probably the most common thing I get from, especially with the younger generation of applicants coming in.
Yeah, I'm also going to talk a little bit about that as well. So we've had some parents involved with the hiring process. We don't see it it's not on a daily or weekly basis by any means. We've definitely had some that are more extreme than others. Some calling to discuss start dates and wanting to push their son's start date back for the doctor's appointment and things like that we have seen. Not very often. These are kind of specific situations. And we've had, I'm trying to think of others, an intern this past summer, his father called because his son was going to find different housing on his own. We provide free housing, and which is perfectly fine, but it's like, you know, go ahead and have the student contact us, and, you know, we can work through it. So there's been some interesting things in that regard, and we just kind of gently say, you know, no problem, but feel free to have your son or daughter give us a call, and we can work out the details and that type of thing. So there's been some interesting things from that perspective. But we definitely recognize that families with our new grads and our interns play a key role in their decision making. Not all of them, but I would say the vast majority of them. I was on the phone with a person we have an offer out to this morning, and I said, feel free to talk it over with your parents. I mean, that's just part of, we know that's generally going to happen. A lot of times they'll reference that. Or they'll call back with questions, you know, maybe not the parent, but saying, well, my mom and dad wanted to know, you know, that kind of thing, because, you know, 401k and pensions and things aren't necessarily the forefront. It's generally the salary that the the new grad is typically looking at the family. You can tell when they are involved more of the benefits and that type of thing, generally speaking. So some things that we've kind of done from a more positive spin on it is we recognized a few years ago that this is the reality. It is what it is, and that's, instead of trying to fight that, we wanted to embrace that, similar to what you've talked about, and we understand that's an important part of it, and we want to make sure that they're making the right decisions, and if their parents are a part of that process to get them there, excellent. Well, at the end of the day, we want somebody who wants to be with our company. So we've done things like in our interim program with having a family day as an example. So it says family day, but we also offer that up to significant others, to friends, because we recognize it's not just your family. We actually, have a lot of people where the significant other is kind of the decision maker, married or not. My girlfriend is wanting to, we want to end up in the same place, and so if she can find a job, then, then we'll be looking in this area, and we see that a lot. We always joke we should have a dating service. Like, how can we match people up or have, find their significant other's jobs to get people? But it's very, in all seriousness, it really is sometimes even a bigger factor is kind of an extended family, but, they're thinking, into the future from that regard, and we've had people who will wait to see if their significant other finds a position here before they accept our offer, and that kind of thing. So it's been interesting to even see that piece of it kind of come into play. It's not specifically family, but it's potentially going to be family, I guess, later on down the road.
What do you do during that family day? What does that look like?
Yeah, so what we do is it's a half a day, and so we usually have it on a Friday so that they can come and spend the weekend with their son or daughter. And basically what we do is kind of changed it over the years. Every year we're always looking at what can we do better, what can we change. This year, as an example, we had a presentation at the beginning, kind of to kick it off. Our executive, who's our president and CEO, he talked, his sons are going to K-State now. So he had a very good personal touch on it from that perspective, because he's kind of going through the same thing. But just talking about the importance of family, we're a very family-oriented company anyway, so it kind of plays into what we already believe in. So we just kind of talk to the parents, kind of explain to them what Garmin's about, and what they do, because their son or daughter is there, but they aren't there. Sometimes some are very involved, but some, may not hear from their child for a couple months and don't know what they've been up to. So we want to make sure they understand it's almost selling Garmin to the parents, to be completely honest, and just educating them on what we have to offer. So we've done that, and then we'll do we have many business segments within Garmin, so our fitness, our outdoor, aviation, that kind of thing. So we have done an expo this past summer to just really showcase kind of like a job fair setting in a way, where the parents and the students can walk around and talk to the different business segments and better understand what Garmin's all about. With everybody knows us for our car GPS, and obviously everybody knows that cell phones have taken over a big portion of that, but people don't know the things that we do that don't relate to that whatsoever, the marine industry, the aviation. So we use that time to really make sure that the parents understand that, as well, to understand that we are a growing company. We're in many business segments outside of even what most people know us from. And then we also do, we allow the students to do a self-guided tour, so they take their parents to see their workplace, which all parents want to see. Where are you every day? You like to visualize, your son or daughter sitting, they're in that office, or that, meet their coworkers, their supervisors, that kind of thing. And then we have an ice cream social at the end, and it's just, a Sunday, and my team serves the ice cream, and they put toppings on it, kind of make it a fun day. We'll do a picture, usually with the family. We've done kind of the photo booth, just for fun. Engineers don't especially enjoy dressing up, so we're going away from that. Last year we made the mistake of, we had a photo booth, an enclosed one, and then this past summer we didn't realize it was not enclosed, so everybody could see, so yeah, we're not going to do that. It went fine, but we recognize our audience, that's probably not the appropriate thing. So, but anyway, just a memento from that regard. We've also done, 2 years ago we sent postcards to family members, so we got people's parents information at the beginning of the summer if they wanted to. It was optional, but we take an intern photo every year, kind of the class of 2013 or 2012, and we sent those postcards out, just kind of here's what Garmin saying hi, your son or daughter's been so great for us, that kind of thing. So those have just been a few examples of things that we've done. and it's always been well received. It's completely optional, obviously, but a lot of people are taking that and it's gone pretty well, so.
Good. So I would say, the K-State, I'd say in the last couple of years, has really branded themselves as like the K-State family. So I don't know if you see K-State football on TV, like the guys are carrying these family signs, and like it's a big thing amongst our student population to really feel like they're family themselves. And so a couple, I think it's maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we implemented like K-State Family Day. So it's different from even our open house, but it's an entire family day. So all the departments are in, and students invite their families back. And it's a lot of activities for children and for give the parents an opportunity to get on campus again and ask questions where they want to ask. So our career services has been open. We've also had tables at different events addressing the parents directly. They have questions. They want to know, should their student be looking for an internship? Are they doing the things that they need to be doing right now? So they have like these pretty legitimate concerns. A lot of them are concerned about their investment in their student. So if their student is spending a significant amount of money in college, like are they on the right track to graduate and find a job, right? So, but what I'm also seeing is like the dynamic of students is changing. So we know this, right? So we know that we're seeing more Hispanic families coming to campus, and Hispanics are very Latina are very bound to their families, and their families help them make a lot of decisions, even more so than a lot of other populations. And so as we're seeing this increase in numbers, like we're also seeing like those families come to campus for campus visits as a family. So they might have, I'm sure some of you are seeing that too, but there's a lot of family members that come, and it's an important part of their process, and sometimes those families are making major sacrifices for those students to be there. So we are all about, like, our office will sit down, we'll have meetings with families, meetings with parents and students. We like to answer their questions. They have a lot of questions about employment, about what types of jobs the student can get with a certain major, if they're thinking this and this, are they on the right track? So just a lot of career decision making. And the other thing we're seeing is like the open, with technology, like the open routes of communication. So when I went to K-State as a bachelor's student, I didn't text my parents all the time because I didn't text all the time, right? So it wasn't like this, it's 2005, and I feel like it was forever ago, right? Because now students are walking to class and they're texting mom, right? Or they're driving home, hopefully on some speakerphone, right? But they're talking to mom and dad, and they value their opinion as mentors sometimes, or they just, in some of those hiring decisions, they haven't been there before. Maybe they don't understand all the benefit packages, and so we encourage them to get multiple opinions. And also, I understand when I'm visiting with students for resumes and things like that, they'll say, my dad, he's an exec, and he looked at it, and I'm like, oh, that's really great. You're going to ask a lot of different people for opinions on resumes. You're going to get a lot of different opinions. At the end of the day, you should combine those and really make this your own document, right? So, but embracing that the students want to ask their parents, I think is great. Like, embrace that relationship, and really understand also that the parents are a huge source of influence and support. So students are kind of coming in, especially their first couple of years, like they're relying back on what they used to know, right? So they're still in their student development stages. They're not there yet to be, I'm going to jump and make some of these decisions on my own. I don't know really that I'm supposed to go to the career fair. I'm hesitant. I don't know anybody else who's going to the career fair, right? But at the beginning, if we bring mom and dad in and they're during new student orientation and we're talking to them about the career fair, and maybe a week or two before, they're like, hey, have you thought about the career fair? And they're sending them a text, or they're on the phone, and they're like, hey, I remember mentioning something about the career fair. So I think just like the mass amount of communication that students can have, I think is great. I think it's great if parents can have some sort of say, although some parents say, like, oh, my student won't listen to me. If I mention it, they're definitely not going to go, right? But actually, most of my students I visit with are like, oh, yeah, my mom reminded me or something, and then parents want to know, do my students need to bring professional attire when they come to campus? Like, they have concerns. I'm like, yes, they should pack their business suit if they have one. I'm like, well, what if they don't have one, right? So they have, like, very real questions about how soon are they going to be jumping into talking with employers, and do they really need to go to the career fair their first year, and just different things. And so we try to very openly communicate with parents as much as absolutely possible. We want them involved in the process. We know they really influence students in the process.
Yes, ma'am. Do you have a parent newsletter or anything like that?
We, specifically from our career services office, we don't, but we have a whole section on our webpage that's for parents. And so we have a lot of resources we put out there specifically targeted towards parents. Our website is k-state.edu/TES, Career Deployment Services. But we do also at K-State have a Parents and Family Association, and they're pretty strong. They have some really good, strong parent leaders that run that organization. So we're not specifically sending those things out, but definitely K-State is sending out things to parents.
On that new student orientation, what does that look like? I mean, you're just open, or do you have a presentation you do, or how many people are in that presentation?
That's a great question. So what we do is they have like all their general sessions where the parents and the students are together, and they go to the skits and they learn the K-State way, all these things, right? And then we split into sections where the parents can kind of pick sessions like you did today. So usually what we see, Career Services has a standing session in those, and it's usually pretty widely attended. It might range from like 25 to 50 parents in a session or something like that. But we kind of go through the range. So we at K-State have an office for the assessment part of Career Services, and we call it Academic Career Information Center. So they partner with us and we present with them. So they present like the developmental part and making sure they're in the right majors, helping them add to their programs, all those things. And then we are like the career services piece, obviously helping them find jobs and internships. And then we also talk about alumni career services. So we kind of go the entire span so parents can understand, like, from the time they start to the time they end, what they can expect as far as support from us and what services we offer.
From the employer standpoint, as far as programming, anything in the employee assistance programming or anything that's maybe changed or to address the significant others? And
As far as like giving them benefits or
other things like that. I mean, how's that changed maybe for you?
Yeah, it definitely is on the radar. We haven't made any drastic changes, to significant others on benefits or things like that at this point in time. But we do a lot of family-oriented activities when somebody is hired as well. It's just part of Garmin's culture. It's very family-oriented. So like this weekend there's a children's Christmas party, for example, and people can bring their kids or their grandkids. Or if you don't have kids, you're probably not going to sit with Santa or whatever. But like Worlds of Fun is an example. We do a company day for Worlds of Fun, and people can bring their significant others and that kind of thing. So we do a lot that allows that. We have a winter event, generally speaking, every January, and people can bring their significant others to that. And it's a lot of times you get to actually meet people. You hear about them at work, but you don't always get to meet them, and so that kind of allows opportunities for that to happen too. So there's a lot of things once you're hired at Garmin that really get families involved, but it generally is more significant others once they're hired. I mean, most people aren't bringing their mom or dad, but it's okay if they do. But generally you don't see that from that perspective. But yeah, we definitely like to include families in the things that we do with them. So trying to think of other things that we do. Have you guys seen from recruiter? I heard this the other day that one of my recruiters was talking about going to a career fair, and we've had parents come to the booth with their college students, but actually it's the first time a high school student came with their parents, because they were checking out what employers actually recruit from that school to see if they wanted to send their high school student to that. I didn't know if anybody else had come across it. That was a new one for us in the last, couple months or so. I didn't know if anyone else was seeing that, or I don't know if there's any insight on that. It was a surprise. It's an interesting thought. They're really looking future. I didn't know if anyone else was coming across that. That was something new to experience.
We think there's different ways to get that information, or annual reports and things like that.
Yeah.
Would pay you.
Yeah, that's what we thought too. We're like, well, we could see them, that's good information to have, but yeah, you're just getting a flyer every time you're doing like that. It's taking an easier way, or more effective for your time, but we didn't mind it. It was just interesting to see that was something new that had come across. So what are you, from any of your perspectives, what have you seen, or what have you guys done to kind of address the families having such an impact with their students?
Being a smaller private school, we welcome 425 freshmen on the fall. Throughout orientation, we're handing out our business cards and our brochures, and it has all of our contact information. If you have any questions, give us a call. And then the next year, the parents start calling and going, oh, we're getting all these phone calls from parents, so we're feeding the beast. And we're encouraging that because we're here and it's a personalized experience for your student and the parents calling. We're just going, oh, wow, we're just getting overwhelmed with all these calls. So we find ourselves questioning that, but it's definitely what you have to do. And then take advantage of it and just work with it.
We do a parent orientation also, and one of the things that's been really helpful for me, and maybe everybody else does it, I'm just ignorant of this fact, all of them are required to come, or not required, I guess, they don't have to, but it's not an optional segment that they move around to. But I get a list of all the parents and their email addresses and who they work for. And I talk to them about how important it is for their student to have an internship and that their student would need that and how beneficial it would be for their company to, I'd like to talk to the person that would be in charge of that program. And so it's been very helpful. Plus, we also sign them up for the newsletters that we create and to preface that by saying this is what your student will be receiving with updates on when events are on campus that they may tell you aren't going on, but this is the way you can be involved and help them in their curriculum.
And that's extremely helpful because I brought two examples. This is October and November, and I find that the e-newsletter that we get as parents, and they talk about ways to open up that dialogue with your student because you usually get the short answer or the one-word answer, where you don't get the text that we've been talking about. But they also give you the calendar of what's coming up, and they also talk about maybe what's being messaged to the student, so that you can ask more appropriate questions that might draw them out a little bit or lead the subjects. And the first thing I noticed when we started doing this last year was it opened up dialogue between my spouse and I so that we were on the same page, because we were finding that I get a different kind of conversation than maybe she would get with my daughter. So, got to have that united front. But it is extremely helpful to, kind of keep it all in front of you and have it in doses like that. And I find it's one of those things in my email that I'll always be looking for every month. So I think the communication, whatever ways that you make that communication personal or you break it down, even at larger universities from smaller ones, it is really that personal communication. I still get, being a graduate at Truman State, I still get stuff today from, people that were in the leadership academics when I was there. And if it's alumni related or anything like that, it might be a personal note written in there from somebody I still know from campus that's still there at, advancing a program. Or when we were at MU for the parents thing, Dr. Spain, who gave the opening to all of the parents, he said, here's my phone number at the end of the day. If you have an issue as a parent, you call me day or night, and he meant it. And I'm sure, again, same thing, call management becomes an issue. And I saw him a year later and thanked him for that. I didn't call him, but I didn't have any reason to call him, but it was nice that they offered that, and it was authentic.
From the employer standpoint, what do you see, how can the universities help prepare their students so they are those independent workers that you're looking for?
Well, I think the word that you mentioned there, independent, is a good one. You see the codependency. There's things like that, like and I think someone had mentioned this, the first couple of years that somebody joins the workforce, it's that adjustment to taking care of their own affairs versus having somebody else be responsible for taking care of their affairs. So we find ourselves in the pre-employment and shortly after post-employment part asking those questions of, like, hey, thanks a lot for accepting the offer for employment. Based on your schedule, what would be a comfortable time to start? Knowing that we have, a few things that have to be done, background check, this, that, the other thing, but do you have any planned time off that you're thinking about? And those are good questions to ask because previously in the interview process, they may not have felt comfortable asking those questions or opening up that kind of dialogue. So it's sort of that progressive leading them a little bit to open up those things. But we find that in the accountability aspect or the independent aspect, getting people to be responsible for their own personal business is first and foremost the thing. Something as simple as having all your documentation so that you can fill out all of the required paperwork to come to work, okay? Or how do you interpret certain questions that you might be asked as part of the background investigation process, whatever. There are issues that are personal to that person in the employment relationship. So it doesn't involve others, but it's simple things, Do you know where your Social Security card is? Do you know what your Social Security number is? Okay? Do you understand you're going to have to produce that within the first 3 days that you're employed or you can't work on the 4th day? Those kinds of things. And sometimes we're hiring folks for detail-oriented positions, They're going to be dotting the I's and crossing the T's, or they're going to be doing very detailed accounting work where we're required to be 99.7% accurate on a daily basis. So you think attention to detail, and then it bothers you when you don't see this kind of attention to detail in the process. So I'd say that independence of saying, okay, do you have your affairs in order, or have you planned for that? And most of the time it's a planning thing. They're not planning. All right, get the job, man. That's it. What are you guys so worried about this detail for? I'm really worried.
Steve, does that change anything as an applicant going through the system and you're seeing that they are lacking some of that detail and now it's 3 days in, they still don't have their Social Security card? Like, are you starting to flag them? Would it change in terms of like maybe their, 30-day or 90-day probation? Like, does anything happen from it, or is it more like, wow, we just see this generation done there?
I'd say it happens so often that I see it as generational. I don't know if you see the same thing, but I think it just happens so often. It's out there, and I guess I got that validated for me. I was at a panel discussion at Maplewoods a couple of months back, Maplewoods Community College, and we were talking about just the simplest things. Professional etiquette in the workplace, those types of things after you start, things that you might have to be watchful for as an employee or be responsible for. And we had people come up afterwards and talk to the panelists, and they said, well, thanks a lot for pointing out some of these examples, because we would never know these things. So, that opportunity to step into the environment, know what you're going to be responsible for. I mean, what it's taught me is we have to dose some of this thing as lessons learned or information to communicate earlier in the interview process, as early as you can, and then it's a constant game of reinforcement leading up to the first day of employment and even afterwards, okay? The whole career development aspect is afterwards. You got to keep dosing people with that and saying, hey, you're responsible for your own career. We're here to help and guide you and give you the tools, but you're responsible for making some decisions. Does it give me a bias? Yeah, I'll tell you it does, okay? So if I see something with one of my hires that's contrary than what other hires have done, especially if you're hiring them as a class and you got 80% of them that have done the right thing, but 20% who have struggled to give you what you need at the right time, it's not that we make a list and put them on a list, but I'm going to remember those names, and my staff knows if there's a problem down the line, I'm going to say, why does this name sound familiar to me? It's not in a good way. Okay? So I think it just gives you cause to pause and say, okay, let me be watchful of that, because if I get a call from a hiring manager or somebody like that who's concerned about the individual's performance or their attention to detail or anything else, that's fine. And we want to know if a person's struggling with situations at any particular time. We were talking about a couple of things here that might be important to a person, and you never know when life circumstances are going to hit. Had a brand new employee that was fine, 2 weeks ago. I just asked a simple question 2 weeks later, how's it going? And burst into tears. And it was one of those situations where there's another member in the household, the family household, who's been disruptive wherever home is, and the whole family is struggling with that circumstance. So here's a new employee who's trying to focus on the job, but the focus back home has reached a crisis, okay? It was a great opportunity to use the Employee Assistance Program as one of those resource aspects and say, there's some tools out there, or there's some people you can talk to that's important in addition to your manager and whatever. So EAP is a big one that, is there for that purpose and needs to be used. But, occasionally you'll run into those things, and that's why it's important to have the ongoing dialogue with the person pre-employment and post-employment when they're coming in.
I'm projecting to the non-traditional college-age students who, with their parents. I'm thinking of the employee, the college student, the college grad who has their own family, their own children, because in career services we invite them to start representing themselves for employer needs, not their own needs. And sometimes, I'll say, don't talk about your family, don't talk about your kids. Well, if they don't care about my kids, I don't want to work for them. How do you, as an employer, you encourage dialogue with the family unit to make decisions, but is it still taboo to talk about your child care needs?
So what I would say from a recruitment standpoint, what we, myself and my team, it's all about in an interview. So are you talking about the interviewing process kind of from that regard? So we focus on the job, anything that's related to the job. And so while, we love to hear about family, we're very family oriented. Having a 2-year-old is not relevant to your job. I mean, that's kind of, so we keep it at everything needs to be focused on, can you do the job itself? And I understand, maybe daycare comes into that, but we don't ask those questions. We don't need to know about your family background. While it's great once you start, we would love to hear about it and, meet them and that kind of thing. It's ultimately in decision making on, does this person have the skill sets necessary to meet the job requirements, basically. And so your family, your friends, it sounds heartless, but there's a lot of legal reasons behind why that, that is, and we just prefer not to have that come into the conversation. And so I think when you're talking to students, I would just tell them that your interview is there to talk about your skill sets that apply to the job and how you're to sell to the employer how you can do that job. So having talking about your mom and dad or, your kids or whatever that is, that's not to me telling you can do the job any better or less than somebody else. So I think that would be my guidance to them, is to really focus on, you've got an hour. They should be spending that time talking about their skill sets. If you're not, no matter what you're talking about, if you're talking about your pet or whatever it is, or something else that's not related, you're not helping us to make a decision on whether you can do the job. And from that standpoint, that may help them to understand that it's not that employers don't care about them, but we have an hour to assess do you have the skill sets necessary, and it's to their advantage to spend that hour talking about those skill sets.
It's funny, in the interview process, if you use a behaviorally based interviewing, where you're looking for situation, action, result type of answers as an indicator of future performance, okay? Same thing. We ground the job in the BFOQs, if you will, bona fide occupational qualifications. You're trying to find out if that person is can do, will fit for the opportunity that you have. And so you ask a variety of different questions. Some of them are behavioral, some of them aren't. It amazes me sometimes in behavioral questions how they will be interpreted by people. I can ask somebody, okay, give me an example of a difficult circumstance that you faced in work or at school, and tell me, what the circumstance was and how you handled that. What was the outcome? And there are people that will draw back. The first example we'll give you is a family-related example, okay, something that happened at home. It's not that that's the wrong answer, okay? What you do is you find out what's really meaningful to that individual through the answer. And then if I hear something that's abstract with the first question, then I'm going to ask more probing questions something that's work-related. Try to get something that's more relevant to, if that's affecting job performance, or will it affect job performance, or how they handle a similar type of stress in a work environment. So you can see all kinds of different interpretations of those kind of questions, but we do see it creeping in the woodwork a little bit.
Well, we do mock interviews. We try to prepare them.
But I'm sure that when they get nervous, those things come out. Have you ever had to go as far as using the law, and I mean, parents being intrusive enough, or other people being intrusive enough that you had to fall back on the policy or the law and say, look, I just can't go there with it?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily like legal to that effect, but yeah, I mean, we sometimes have internal employees who refer their family members, and that can sometimes get to be an awkward situation because they're wanting updates on, their sister or their brother or their wife or their child or that kind of thing. And I don't know if you guys run into that too sometimes, but we definitely have that, and it can get awkward because they want updates and we don't give them. And so that's when we'll fall back on a policy. It's with our policy that we just communicate that with any family member, even externally, that we communicate directly with the candidate. We'll say something like, yes, they've applied, or yes, we're going to review. I mean, kind of generic things that we all do for anything, but so we will rely back on the process from that perspective. I don't know that we've ever gotten into any kind of legal action or anything like that, but yeah, we definitely use that's our policy in regards to giving out information and that kind of thing, which helps us. It makes it a lot less awkward, because some of these are people that that are strong customers internally as well, and but we don't want to do any special favors, I guess, and it makes it easier just to have consistency and say we don't share that. And some people, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of people are just like, here's somebody, I don't want to be involved, and then there's others that almost to the point where you almost have to have a tough conversation and say, listen, I know you care, but we can't share. And they'll go from one person to the next person to the next person to get information and make sure that their, son or daughter, whoever that is getting looked at. And so it can get, it's not often, but there's been a few situations where that's happened, and it's just a little awkward.
I've only had one situation, and it was very extreme. It was someone who knew the applicant and must have been related to them at one point in time, or married to them or something, but they knew the exact date and the exact time that the person had come in for an interview at our facility, and it wasn't from the person themselves. So, we went to the police department on that because it was just too weird, and they traced it back to someone who had access to her phone and knew what her appointments were, and it was totally scripted. This individual had called and basically defamed the applicant's character, okay, and knew exactly what time they were there, and felt compelled to call and say, you shouldn't hire so and so.
Did you hire them?
There were other reasons for that, but it wasn't that.
That's kind of what I was going to ask you on that. Does it really impact your decision-making on who you take in by the amount of involvement a parent has? Is that like a turn-off? Or do you totally just stay neutral? Or, I mean, we're asking you, is that...
Yeah, I would say that it wouldn't be a deal breaker, but I think depending on the amount of involvement, it is a turn-off to me, because it makes me question, kind of similar to what you were saying, it kind of makes you question, their decision-making ability, and if they're not able to, some of it's pretty basic, like calling to say you don't want to use our corporate housing, okay, sounds good, no problem. Like, does your family member really need to do that? And if you can't call and just say, hey, is it okay? Is that even an option? I mean, it's not to me, that's not a big deal conversation. It'd be different if it was like, I expect you to pay and we're not paying, but it's like, hey, I'm opting out of this, is that all right? To me, that's not a negative thing, and so again, it wouldn't be that we wouldn't hire that person back or anything like that, but I think it definitely stands out in your mind, and it makes you wonder, they're going to come across a lot harder situations than that, hopefully. Hopefully we're challenging them more than that, and it makes you wonder how they'll respond in those situations, and it kind of shows just their ability, because once you're in the real world, you have to have tough conversations. That's a part of your job, and if you have to speak up and you have to make decisions, and you have to say if you don't agree with something or you want to see a different option, that's all part of everybody's job. Everybody in this room, you do that on a daily basis. I mean, not daily, but on a pretty regular basis, and so I think it does stand out as, can this person, be effective in that manner? So I think it definitely, like you said, it makes you question, their detail, and with the IDs and things and different things like that. Just, piques your interest a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wondering how you acquire the parents' address and send them that postcard.
Yeah, so we have a form they fill out at the beginning, and we have it on there, so it's just an optional, if you'd like for us to send something to your parent, we make sure they don't think we're doing, sending them like a report or something like that. But
Interns, is that correct?
it's for interns, yeah, yep, exactly. So we don't do it for our full-time people at that point. You're not supposed to be a parent, that
Do
kind of
your
thing.
non-traditional interns who may be in their 30s, or, we have quite a few of those.
Yeah.
So are they offended?
No, so we'll put, if they want us to send something to their spouse as an example or something like that, we've had people do that before, because we do have people who are married and have kids or that kind of thing who are more non-traditional. So we'll give them that option, or they don't put anything. We've never heard anything negative about it, and we kind of make sure it's prefaced as we may be sending a postcard or whatever we intend to do, so it's not shady or like, well, why do they want that? We're very upfront, but this is why we want it. If you don't want your parents to receive something, that's kind of what we did 2 years ago, this past year, because it is sometimes hard to get all that and manage all of that. We just ended up doing kind of the agenda for our family day. We had the postcard there, basically, so they got it as they came in. But yeah, we just asked at the beginning of the summer, along with other information, so it was kind of...
Oh, because you could have it all ready to go and have them send it themselves to their...
Yeah.
Like so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that you also have interns in other locations besides your headquarters. And how do you address making those interns feel as involved or as, the special from afar, like with the family day or the photos, the intern photo? How do you include those?
Yeah, it's a challenge, because we do have, I think, probably 6 or 7 other sites that have them, but here we have our largest group, but at those off-sites we may have 1 intern, or maybe up to 5 or 6 interns, so it's a much smaller scale. So their experience is a little bit different, but we really empower the offices there to kind of get more involvement from that regard. So, and in fact, when it's smaller, it's a lot easier sometimes to make it even more personal versus when you have 150 people that you're trying to... But we let them, we kind of train them on what we're doing here at headquarters and give them ideas on what they can do. And sometimes they'll take it to the next step because they only, you can do a lot more with a couple people, a lot more extravagant and exciting versus, like I said, 150. But we have them follow a pretty similar program to ours. They may do enhancements just because they are able to with a smaller group, but we really make sure we spend time training our off-sites on kind of what we do to make sure that they're following the process kind of across the board, if that makes sense. So they don't necessarily do a family day, but a lot of times we also hire people who, for our off-sites, are more local to that area. Like we bring everybody kind of from all over here, but we generally focus on people from that area. So if it's here in North Carolina, generally they're local whose families live in the area and that kind of thing, and are pretty familiar with Garmin. A lot of what we do for Family Days here also is because a lot of people aren't, because they're not from the area and that kind of thing too. But yeah, we definitely try to make sure that the interns are getting a very similar experience across the board. And in some ways, because it's smaller, sometimes they make it, even more. They know everybody in the office, and, we do presentations at the end of the year, or end of the summer, and the offsite, the entire office goes to it. Well, it's headquarters, we don't have the entire company go to it, and it's just that you almost sometimes maybe feel even more special on the offsite because of that. which has been a kind of unique thing. It's a bit different, but it's not a negative. Actually, it's a positive.
So if you have, and I know this is a little bit off topic, but if you have an intern class photo, and your remotes are not included in that photo, have you found that that's been a problem, or?
We've not heard anything negative from that regard, and a lot of times some of our officers will actually offer them to come here and give them the choice. So a lot of them are actually choosing to go to a different location, if that makes sense to you. So I think they kind of just recognize the fact that the biggest, when they take a job, they're educated in understanding that, you're only going to have a couple interns here, but there's a large intern group here. And a lot of times people will still select the other, or they kind of have that understanding. So there's never been any hard feelings with that. And we definitely ask for the off-site to take pictures and that kind of thing as well. But we're obviously not sending off-site parents the picture of their non-child. You know what I mean? We don't do that or anything like that. But yeah, it's hard with so many different locations. It is a big challenge for us to keep it as consistent as we can. So, yeah, good question.
Any other questions? Parting shots for y'all?
I was actually going to add just a couple of things too. Like, we really encourage our parents and students both to be involved in our social media. So when we're posting all of our events and things on Facebook, we have quite a few parent followers on our Facebook page, and so we encourage that. Also, you had mentioned you gather the parents where they work. We call it hire a wildcat, and so we do promote that with the parents. Parents are a good source of coming back and hiring our students, and so I think it's a great resource to be able to utilize them in that way. And we've actually worked on expanding a few different programs to try to do more outreach to students' parents, because they're a good source of somebody who's already really connected to the Wildcat family. So, but yeah, I guess that was the only things I thought of from our perspective. Unless anybody has other career services questions.
We'll find the same thing with social media and the way that that's changing the landscape a little bit. I mean, people can follow us on Twitter, they can follow us on Facebook, that type of thing, or LinkedIn connections, and it is surprising to me that sometimes you will see parents looking at profiles on LinkedIn, if their student or their kid is going to come to work at a certain place. Your profile was examined by so-and-so, and maybe it's because my name was on correspondence or something that was written for the offer letter or whatnot. So you do see that, but you're starting to see more of that necessity of communication, people wanting to know what your company's doing and whatnot. And back to the meaningful aspect of it, I saw the statistic where regardless of what the salary is, more and more students are making that decision that if they know that the reputation of that company and the values of that company are in alignment with something that's meaningful to them, they're more inclined to accept that job offer than accept the highest job offer. So it's kind of interesting just to watch how this is shaping culture a little bit, how important communication is.
Great, then I guess there's nothing else y'all want to add. I want to thank you all for being on the panel and